The next thing that we're going to talk about is how the view part of a login view controller works. So I just want to remind you before we take a look at the actual code for the login view, I want to show you what the HTML looks like. Right? So the job of the login view is to spit out this HTML. All right, and once the user's press submit on the form with a legitimate login, the job of the login view is to spit out the HTML and other HTTP response information that triggers a redirect to the vote for a book page, the survey page. All right, so that's the job. So let's go back and take a look at our code here. And I want to look at the code for the login controller one more time. Okay. There's a few more comments in here than there were before, but here we go. So in the login controller, after you've specified your user ID and password or not, if it's the first time to the login controller, isValid's going to detect that right here. And let me just bring this up a little bit. And we're either going to redirect to the next page, to the survey page, or we're going to display the form. Now the HTML that triggers the redirect and the HTML that displays the form is being created by this login view object. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look at the code for the login view object. And it turns out that the code is pretty short and sweet, but pretty cool. And if you think about it, the controller here doesn't contain any of those print statements that mess up the logic and flow of how you would want to wire the front end, the web front end, to the back end, the model. So let's take a look. So login view.py. All right. So here's the code for login view.py. So login view is a class, just like login controller was a class, and it contains two different methods. So the first method is, let's take a look at the view method because that's kind of probably the first method you see. So the first method is the view method, and the view method just prints out all of the HTML that prints out the form for the login page. So this is, we wrote this code a couple of weeks ago, and all I've done is just taken all the print statements and stuffed them in one place in a method called the view method. And then up here, so that'll get displayed if you have an incorrect login or it's the first time you're going to log in. And then all the code for the redirect, let me just bring that up a little bit more. I'll bring this, there we go. All the code for the redirect, this is the code that's going to allow us to jump from the login page to the survey page. And the code for the redirect is right here. And you can see there's the line right here that's going to take you to the survey controller. There's also this print statement right here, which is going to allow the cookie information, which contains the user ID, to get printed out. So there's a lot of print statements here, right? Like 2 screens worth of print statements. And the cool thing is it's all hidden and buried inside this login view object. All right, so let's go back to the controller again. So we create that view object, we either do a view direct or a view, and that's it. So what you need to do when you're working on your email application is you want to make sure that in the controllers that you write for your email application, you don't have a single HTML print statement, a print statement that's printing out HTML. All of the code that that is responsible for managing HTML, all that code is going to go into the view. Now the other thing I want you to see, I want you to notice about the view is that the view is pretty stupid. The only thing that you see in the view is a bunch of print statements, just pure hard-coded print statements. And there's one exception to that, and that's the single line that's printing cookie output. So there's nothing else. So if you're in a situation where you're writing a lot of smart code in your view, then you're probably not doing a good job of managing what code goes where, because the view is really responsible for just getting output to the user. If you have a lot of if statements and all kinds of control structures and calls to methods and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff in your view code, then you're not doing a good job of writing your view. Your view should be really, really simple. Really, that's all I have to say about the view. So the view almost looks like a web page, and in fact, as we advance through better frameworks, there are places where that is exactly what the view is. The view is just some HTML with maybe a few lines of special code to pull some stuff out of your code to stick it in the HTML. So keep it simple when you're doing these views. You're typically going to have a view.view method and a view.redirect method, and that's it. And those in just a bunch of print statements. All right? Cool. So that takes care of the view. So the next thing I want to talk about then, let's go back to the controller. The next thing that I want to talk about is, let's go back here again. So this really important statement, right? If self.isValid user ID and password, either do the redirect or show the blank form using the view. Well, this isValid thing is pretty sophisticated. So let's take a look at the code for it. The nice thing is there's only 3 lines of code here, but there's a lot that's going on. So we create this thing called a user DAO, or user data access object. We use the DAO to select some information from the data store for the user, and then we return true if we found the user and the password's correct. So I want to focus on the user DAO and how that's constructed, and also the user object, because it's pretty clear that this DAO thing returns objects and not just like simple data. So I want to take a look at how that works. So first, to set the stage for that, why don't we think about what a user object would look like.